So the Yukon has benefited from substantial national support to the arts and culture sector through Canada Council for the Arts and Canadian Heritage. Recent funding cuts to arts and culture will affect the Yukon. The question: how will your party respond to the issues raised by the current funding cuts to arts, culture, and heritage programs, and in particular to those affecting the international promotion of Canadian culture? So could we start with John Stryker this time?
You know, 50%, nearly 50% of Canada's artists live in 3 cities: Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. So yeah, there is a lot of funding that's here in the territory for artists here. But, and there's a huge diversity of arts here, and it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's a very vibrant place, and it's one of the reasons that I love it here. But that diversity is still fragile in a way that if we don't maintain support at the national level and the ability to connect the artists that we have here out to the broader community of arts and artists and to the international scene, then what happens is we tend to lose our artists here. Artists don't stay in the smaller regions, the smaller communities, the more remote areas, and they concentrate in the cities, the big cities, where there's just more infrastructure and community. So we actually have a risk here, and that's important to me that we address that. In particular, what would the Green Party do? What the Green Party has is its fundamental policy regarding the arts that we need to have a stable base funding. There needs to be some clarity and stability so that the arts knows what's coming. And the Green Party's policy is to introduce a percentage of Canada's GDP as a fixed percentage for arts funding so that we know that from year to year and we can see what's coming. In particular, with respect to the international programs that were cut, I was surprised that it happened because in the first instance, when you think about Canada and how it reaches out to other countries and represents itself out there, the cheapest, I mean that in an economic sense, not in a quality sense, but the least expensive way to do that, to make those connections, is to do it through the diplomacy of our arts and culture. The small amounts of money that we give to those people who are not, they're not making money hand over fist. This is not sort of a grab for money. It's a very effective way for us to carry out international relations. And we know of several artists here from the Yukon who have represented us very well in the circumpolar world and internationally. So the Green Party would reinstate all those funding cuts and would entrench them so that they get a stable funding base into the future.
Look, these cuts are devastating. They're totally inappropriate. They're unsupportable, and there's absolutely no sensible rationale behind them. So the short answer, we would reinstate all the cuts, and we're actually going to increase funding in a number of areas for the arts. And since these cuts, I've seen much passion from the industry people like Tim Jones and Mark Smith and many others who champion these programs that were cut, that have allowed our leading cultural figures to showcase us to the world. And as John said, some of you are in this room right now. Prom Arts, as an example, only cost 14 cents per Canadian to showcase our most enduring quality to the nations of the earth. So why would we cancel that? So here are some of the things we would do. We would increase, over and above putting the cuts back, increase the International Arts Program, $15 million over 3 years. We would reinvest at least the $11.8 million that was gutted from the public diplomacy program that our diplomats overseas use to use Canadian artists and cultural personalities to showcase Canada to other nations. We would increase the Canadian film or video production credit to 30%, and that's worth $160 million. And as you know, I've long been a supporter of the film industry in the Yukon. It's a great industry, great asset here. We're going to double, this is huge, we would double the Canada Council budget to $360 million, and the Yukon makes good use of that because we have so many artists, and that's, I'm very excited about that. We would have income averaging for artists like Quebec does, because artists' income sometimes goes in peaks and valleys, and that would make a lot more help to them. We'd support the Canadian content by directing CRTC to better reflect peaks and valleys. We would stabilize the Canadian Television Fund by giving it long-term funding. In early 2007, the Conservative government created a crisis in the CTF when they failed to defend it. And it's another great organization, had over 4,000 projects and 20,000 hours of Canadian TV programming. We need also to continue to support training, so we would reverse the cuts made to the National Training Program for film and video sector. And the last one, which I'm very excited about because I fought so hard in Parliament for the last couple of years, over and over again, about the ridiculous cuts to museums. There's 2,200 museums that bring 60 million Canadians to them, and we would double that funding back up to 16, well, it's more than it was, to $16 million. And finally, just, this sounds like a lot of programs, which I'm sure artists and the industry is very happy about it, but also we have to try and, personally I want to try and make sure that we keep the bureaucracy down, that we don't make it so many loopholes. I mean, you've got art to do, and we want to make sure that you can apply for these reasonably and get on with your work.